What is non-self? The pinnacle of wisdom and understanding in Buddhism. Our body is impermanent, and so are our emotions and perceptions. Anger, sadness, love, hatred, and all forms of consciousness are transient and ever-changing. Non-self, Anatta in Buddhist philosophy, is a distinct and defining concept unique to Buddhism. While other schools of philosophy and religions may allude to similar ideas, the concept of true non-self exists solely in Buddhism. Non-self can be seen as the peak of wisdom, the ultimate understanding, and the final destination of spiritual cultivation. All Buddhist teachings aim toward realizing non-self, and all practices serve as tools to support the attainment of this profound insight. We continue to suffer because we cling to the idea of a self. This is attachment to the ego. In daily life, we often use words like I, me, or mine to refer to ourselves. However, Buddhism teaches that there is no true I, no real mine. When we no longer cling to this notion of self, suffering naturally fades away and happiness arises. The more we cling to the ego, the deeper the suffering. The closer we approach non-self, the more genuine happiness we experience. The deeper our realization of non-self, the greater the liberation and peace we attain. So, what exactly is non-self? Why does Buddhism place non-self among the three marks of existence, the essential seals that guide all practitioners on the path of awakening? What is non-self? Before we can understand non-self, we first need to grasp what self means. In ancient Indian philosophy during the time of the Buddha, the self, Atman, referred to the master or ruling soul. Master, meaning the one who commands and controls freely, and ruler, meaning the one who arranges, judges, and directs. Thus, the self was seen as the sovereign authority within, the one believed to have full control over the body and mind. Most people naturally feel as if they are the true master of their body and mind, firmly believing in the existence of this internal self. Non-self, Anatta, literally meaning no self, carries deeper meanings depending on different Buddhist traditions. In Mahayana Buddhism, non-self can imply the absence of any predetermined essence. In Theravada Buddhism, it specifically means not me and not mine. Therefore, non-self teaches that within us, there is no unchanging, independent, or sovereign entity. Since all phenomena lack a distinct self, they are impermanent. Impermanence means constant change, and without permanence, there can be no separate, lasting self. Our body is impermanent, our emotions are impermanent, and so are our perceptions. Thus, there's nothing within us we can truly call a self. Moreover, all things in this world exist through mutual dependence. They support and sustain each other, giving rise to life as we know it. For example, to create a piece of paper, we need the earth, the sun, forests, clouds, machinery, and human labor. Without all these elements, a sheet of paper could not exist. Similarly, a flower cannot exist independently. It embodies the earth, rain, sunlight, weeds, and insects. Nothing in this universe exists alone. Everything is deeply interconnected. Even though non-self suggests there is no inherent me, it doesn't mean we do not exist or that things do not exist. A cup may be empty or full of tea, but whether empty or full, the cup itself must first exist. Thus, non-self does not mean existence or non-existence. It describes the continuous flow of change at every moment. It's a profound training of the mind, letting go of attachments that bring suffering and emotional turmoil to ourselves and others. How is non-self understood in Buddhism? In the Buddhist path, non-self, Anatta, is the practice that leads one beyond the endless cycle of birth and death, samsara. In Buddhism, non-self is one of the three marks of existence: impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and non-self, anatta. Buddhism teaches that everything in existence arises through dependent origination. Nothing has absolute control over its own birth or death. What is born must perish. This is impermanence. What is impermanent leads to suffering, and what suffers and changes depending on conditions is non-self. The discourse on the characteristic of non-self, Anatta Sutta, states that the self is non-existent. Instead, a human being is merely the combination of the five aggregates: body, form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, constantly arising and ceasing. Buddhism encapsulates this teaching in three famous statements. All conditioned phenomena are impermanent. All conditioned phenomena are suffering. All phenomena are non-self. Thus, not only are human beings without a self, but all phenomena lack an independent, unchanging essence. Nothing escapes the process of arising and passing away. All things are interconnected and ever-changing. Every individual naturally clings to a personal sense of self. This attachment to our identity, our pride, is deeply ingrained through countless generations, buried in the subconscious. The stronger the self-attachment, the deeper the suffering and confusion. For those who follow the Buddha's genuine teaching, Dhamma, understanding and practicing non-self is fundamental. Without realizing non-self, one cannot truly walk the path to liberation. Through deep contemplation on dependent origination and impermanence, we can see that everything in this world arises from conditions. There is no isolated, independent existence. Everything is in constant transformation. For example, if we look at a leaf, we see the water, the minerals from the soil, the sunlight, the air, all the elements necessary for its existence. The leaf turns from green to yellow, then withers and decomposes into dust. There is no fixed, eternal leaf. The most important application of non-self is to reflect on ourselves. We are the union of the five aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Are we the body? Are we feelings? Are we thoughts? We are none of these, because each aggregate itself is impermanent and non-self. Looking deeply, we see that our body, form, is just a combination of earth, water, fire, and air elements, temporarily gathered due to conditions and eventually dissolving when conditions disperse. Each day, countless cells die and countless new cells are born. Thus, the body we have today is not the same as yesterday's body. It is ever-changing and therefore not a fixed self. Our mind is the same, sometimes joyful, sometimes sorrowful. So which mind is truly me? Am I my thoughts? Thoughts are constantly changing, so which thought is me? Whatever we attach to as self, we will find that it is impermanent and replaceable. Thus, we are nothing but a dynamic, ever-changing flow of the elements and aggregates. However, due to ignorance, avidya, we stubbornly cling to a false notion of self. Believing in this false self, we exhaust ourselves seeking comfort for it, feeding it delicious food, dressing it in beautiful clothes, offering it pleasures, all of which inevitably lead to more suffering. This is the theoretical understanding of non-self. Grasping the concept is relatively easy. Reading a few texts will suffice. However, experiencing and realizing non-self in daily life requires deep and persistent spiritual practice. Practices such as generosity, dana, loving kindness, metta, patience, khanti, meditation, bhavana, chanting sutras, and reciting mantras all help us gradually loosen the grip of self-centeredness. By forgetting ourselves and thinking of others, we slowly dissolve our ego and move closer to truly realizing non-self. That is why those who engage in acts of kindness and compassion often experience greater happiness and peace than those who live selfishly. To awaken to non-self, one must constantly use wisdom to contemplate the nature of dependent origination, impermanence, suffering, and non-self. We must strive to abandon selfish desires, live more for others, prioritize collective welfare over personal gain, practice sharing and giving. Through this, joy and inner peace will naturally arise. The benefits of living with non-self. The teaching of non-self, Anatta, forms the very foundation of Buddhism. When applied to daily life, it reveals profound benefits. First of all, every human being inevitably experiences suffering, dukkha, driven by greed, anger, and ignorance. These mental afflictions arise precisely because of attachment to the self. The stronger the attachment to me and mine, the deeper the suffering. Conversely, when one practices non-self and understands that everything in life is constantly changing, one's life naturally becomes freer and more serene. Because of clinging to the self, various troubles arise, clinging to possessions and rigid self-views. For instance, when someone threatens our possessions like money, property, or status, we instinctively react with anger and distress. However, for one practicing non-self, there is no rigid attachment to possessions as mine, and thus, when losses occur, suffering is minimal. Similarly, those who cling strongly to their opinions often argue fiercely when contradicted, even escalating into violence. In contrast, a practitioner of non-self cultivates humility, avoids arrogance or competitiveness in speech and actions. At the beginning, practicing non-self might still bring pain when facing harsh words, but as the ego slowly dissolves, even slander and insults lose their sting. As the Dhammapada says, like a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not moved by praise or blame. Indeed, in the journey toward inner peace, living by non-self is crucial. It frees us from egoic clinging and leads us back to our pure original mind, the untainted state we once had before worldly influences clouded it. According to Buddhist teachings, besides dependent origination, paticca samuppada, and non-self, the Buddha also taught about rebirth, samsara, a doctrine intricately linked with these principles. After death, a human being does not simply vanish. Rather, they undergo rebirth into one of the 6 realms of existence, based on their karmic actions. So, what exactly carries over after death? Some Buddhist schools explain that between the moment of death and the next rebirth, there exists an intermediate state known as the intermediate body. This intermediate form is also referred to by various names: the subtle body, consciousness, karmic consciousness, or the storehouse consciousness, alaya vijñāna. It is sometimes loosely referred to as the soul, though Buddhism does not equate this with an eternal soul. The intermediate body is extremely subtle and invisible to ordinary perception. Although it lacks physical sense organs like eyes or ears, it still perceives and moves, manifestations born of karmic energy. The great Buddhist treatise Mahaprajna Paramita Shastra, Volume 90, affirms that the intermediate body is essentially consciousness, one of the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, with only consciousness continuing after death. When a person dies, the other four aggregates, form, feeling, perception, and mental formations, dissolve along with the physical body, leaving only consciousness to move forward based on karma. Non-self and the absence of a soul. The function of consciousness is to store all karmic seeds, both wholesome and unwholesome actions. For this reason, it is sometimes called the storehouse consciousness or karmic consciousness. From this karmic store, the cycle of cause and effect unfolds, determining one's rebirth after death. The realm into which one is reborn among the 6 realms, gods, humans, asuras, animals, hungry ghosts, or hell beings, is entirely based on the karma accumulated while living in the human world. According to the law of karma taught in Buddhism, there is no supreme being or divine force that assigns us to heaven or hell. Rather, it is purely the natural result of our own actions, a profound truth that upholds personal responsibility, encourages moral living, respects reality, and cherishes justice. Importantly, even the intermediate body, the subtle form often referred to as the soul, does not exist independently. It does not arise from nowhere, nor come from another realm. It is simply a manifestation conditioned by our present body and the 5 aggregates: form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. The process of arising and ceasing of this so-called soul also follows dependent origination, meaning it has no intrinsic, independent essence. Thus, Buddhism firmly rejects the idea of an eternal, unchanging soul. However, this intermediate existence, the subtle body that separates from the physical body at death, is very abstract and difficult to comprehend. Still, the Buddha's teachings, preserved in the sutras, are grounded in ultimate truth. From this unwavering faith, we are encouraged not only to believe, but also to cultivate wise doubt, for it is through sincere inquiry that true awakening can arise. Dear friends, that concludes today's video. What are your thoughts on this topic? Please feel free to share your reflections in the comments below. Wishing you and your family peace, happiness, and wisdom always.